So, Whoopi Goldberg is in the Epstein files. Yeah, it's not what you think. If you're eating lunch, don't worry. You're not gonna, you might. Any talk of Whoopi Goldberg may actually make you nauseous. But no, it's not what you think. There's no unredacted photos of her in a hot tub with Bill Clinton. That we know of. No, but Whoopi, of all, the Epstein files, it's amazing to me because it's really just an incredible, when you think about it, when you think about these 3 million emails that they've released, the 3 million emails and photos and videos, and yeah, there's some that are salacious, there's some that are crazy, and then the rest are just emails. Like if I look at my email, I would say I have probably 200,000 spam emails. I have probably 200,000 emails from, I don't know, YouTube and Facebook and various other different scammers. I have a bunch from, Nigerian and Liberian princes who are offering me millions of dollars if I just give them my bank account information. I've got all that kind of stuff. So Jeffrey Epstein, he's got all kinds of emails too. And these aren't all, pedophile blackmail emails. They're not all email transmissions between, I don't know, what Israel and Russia and everyone else he's supposedly intertwined with. No, some of these are just regular emails. Whoopi Goldberg is apparently in one of those emails, and she had to speak out about it on The View. Well, The View, they had to start the show with Whoopi Goldberg explaining why she's in the Epstein files.
Now, in the name of transparency, can you put up my name is in the files? Yes. And what does it say? It says, Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco. John Lennon's charity, it should say Julian Lennon's charity, is paying for it. They don't want to charter, so they're looking for private owners. Here's the info. And they give all the information, and they're saying, do you want to offer your G2? Okay.
And it looks like they said no thanks.
That's the best part. They're like, nope. That's the best. So Whoopi Goldberg, in full transparency, and we're going to get to the CBS stuff here in a minute. We're going to get to Anderson Cooper. We're going to get to Stephen Colbert. We're going to get to the hissy fit that the media is having. We're going to get to the fake news imploding over what President Donald Trump is doing to the media landscape. We're going to get to all of that. There's so much fake news media stuff going on now. There's so much Donald Trump, yada, yada, this, that, and the other thing. It's really amazing, but we're going to get to all that here in just a minute. But first, Whoopi Goldberg, she's in the Epstein files, and Whoopi Goldberg's name appears in this email because she's going to a charity event, and Julian Lennon is going to be paying for her plane, but they don't want to charter one, so they're looking for private owners. And as Sonny points out, they said no. Epstein, do you want to lend Whoopi Goldberg your plane so she can get to Julian Lennon's charity? No, thanks. Okay, good. On to the next, but she's in the files. And that means that she has to answer for it.
So in other words, anybody can be on this list.
Well, this is my point, because I'm telling you, when I tell you people are trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
I was not only too old, but it was at a time, where this is just not, you used to have facts before you said stuff.
Wow, look at that. This is Whoopi Goldberg blowing the lid off of the whole Donald Trump is a pedophile narrative. This is Whoopi Goldberg blowing the lid. Basically, The View has been saying Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. All the leftists have been saying Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Donald Trump is trying to turn this into a hoax because he doesn't want people to know that he's in the Epstein files. Here's Whoopi Goldberg in the Epstein files going, look, you can be in the Epstein files and it doesn't mean nothing. You can be in the Epstein files just because your name appears in an email. I wasn't his girlfriend. I never went to the island. I believe all of that, by the way. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein was not into Whoopi Goldberg at all. I will be honest with you, I'm still a little shocked that Ted Danson was, but that's a story for another day. And so what she's basically blowing the lid off of the entire left-wing narrative about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, saying anybody can be in the Epstein files.
It's on the list 38,000 times.
Well, I can't speak to him, but I'm speaking about me because I'm getting dragged. People actually believe that I was with him. It's like, honey, come on. Yeah. Every man that I've ever been with, you've known about him because either the Inquirer wrote it about it. Yeah. Your people wrote about this stuff. So no, I never had this, and no, I didn't get on the plane because you know what I would have to do to get on the plane?
fly.
They were trying to, yeah.
And she doesn't fly.
No, so they're trying
She's
to
a
get
bus
me.
babe.
They're trying to get me to get on a plane to get to this thing for Julian Leng.
Yeah, but the thing is, they dropped like 300 names.
Yes.
And it's like flood the zone because when you're looking, there are people like Marilyn Monroe who was dead.
Elvis.
Yeah, a lot of people, because a lot of the reasons your name can be mentioned are news articles, third-party emails, contacts. Again, wealthy, famous people often cross in professional and social circles, so that's not the surprising part.
Look at that. Wealthy professional people often cross in social circles. Like, oh, I don't know, who's wealthy and professional that we know? Donald Trump? There's one. Wealthy and professional people often cross in social circles. So they're exonerating Donald Trump while trying to exonerate Whoopi Goldberg. They're exonerating Donald Trump without, I mean, it's a very, very difficult thing for them to do. They're trying to maintain that Donald Trump is a bad, evil person because he's in the Epstein files while trying to complain or trying to point out that Whoopi Goldberg is not because she's in the Epstein files. The Clintons are in the Epstein files too, and Hillary Clinton's trying to walk that one back.
You regret the links that there have been? You know, we have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work.
He took some rides on the airplane. He took some rides on the airplane for charity or with charity. Charity, by the way, was a 17-year-old girl. That's what she's not telling you. My husband, yeah, he took some flights on the plane with charity, for charity, whatever, you know it is. that's done. We all know, by the way, we remember Monica. We remember the press conference. We remember everything. We remember the impeachment. We remember I have never had sexual relations with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky. And then 2 weeks later, it was a totally different story. We know who Bill Clinton is. So the fact that he was even on the plane, Whoopi Goldberg on the plane, nothing's going to happen. I guarantee nothing's going on. But Bill Clinton on the plane, that's a whole other story.
I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about. They are accused, and in both cases were convicted of horrific crimes against girls and women. That should be the focus.
That should be the focus, not me and my lecherous husband who appeared on the plane a few times. Took some rides on the old Lolita Express, but you know, the focus on them because they're the bad ones. They're the ones who have done terrible, horrible, no good, very bad things. Now, there's also, of course, some other Epstein stuff going on. Donald Trump was asked about it on, where was it? He was asked about it again. I mean, he's always asked about it. He was asked about it on his plane, Air Force One. We'll get to that in just a minute. And of course, I do want to dive headfirst into the whole FCC going after Stephen Colbert and CBS and Anderson Cooper walking away from 60 Minutes because it shows a real boon to the fake news media landscape. It shows a real change, an altering of the old guard when we look at the fake news media. And it's very exciting for anybody who looks. I don't know why you're still looking at these channels, but if you're looking at these channels for your news coverage, it's going to get a lot better. First, though, make sure you subscribe to this channel because when it comes to news, when it comes to real, truthful information, when it comes to the kind of information you need to make sure that you understand who's attacking you and who's coming after you, when it comes to the kind of stuff that you need to know so that you realize who's trying to imperil and destroy and trample upon your rights, you want to subscribe to this show because we do that every single day. And we do it multiple times a day. There's all kinds of great ways that we deliver content to you. The podcast on iTunes and on Spotify. There's Rumble and Facebook and X, all kinds of great stuff. And I don't want you to miss any of it because it's all amazing. So President Donald Trump, he was riding back on his airplane. He was going back to Washington, D.C., where he is right now. And he's doing the work of the people. He's back in the Oval Office. He's trying to make America great again. He's doing everything he can. But on the plane, he had some time to kill. So he wanders back to where the press are seated and he takes some questions, which is one of my favorite parts about Donald Trump on Air Force One. And Donald Trump says to the media asks President Donald Trump about AOC's foreign policy flub, the now viral video that's been going around. I mean, it's everywhere. We played it yesterday. I'll play it for you again. This is her just totally bombing on a question about Taiwan.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is of course
Yeah. We don't know what it is. Well, Donald Trump was asked about it. He goes, "Oh, it's embarrassing. She's incompetent."
By the way, I watched AOC answering questions in Munich. This was not a good look for the United States. I watched Gavin Newsom answering questions in Munich, and this was a bad look for our country. These two people are incompetent. And at least Hillary's competent. She's just Trump deranged. She was so deranged. She is an angry woman. But I watched the other two speaking and answering basic questions. Look, Gavin has destroyed California. And AOC, I never heard her speak very much. And they started answering questions. She had no idea what was happening. She had no idea how to answer, very important questions concerning the world. But she can't answer questions concerning New York City either, because New York City got some problems.
Yeah, got some real problems. She can't answer questions about New York City because she's the one that installed Zoran Mamdani into the mayor's office. So she's not going to, what's she going to say? Mission accomplished for her. She's spreading socialism. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. It doesn't matter if it makes everybody miserable. It doesn't matter if it just destroys the entire, one of the biggest cities when it comes to the global economy. That doesn't matter. What matters is that AOC thinks she can be president. And she can't even answer a simple question about Taiwan. Donald Trump says it's a bad look. It's a bad look for the United States of America. Hillary Clinton, a backhanded compliment. At least she's competent. At least Hillary Clinton is competent, even though she's evil and satanic.
So Hillary Clinton said in an interview today that she and her husband are getting pulled into the Epstein matter to divert attention from you, and that your administration has something to hide. What's your response to that?
I have nothing to hide. I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They went in hoping that they'd find it and found just the opposite. I've been totally exonerated. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was fighting that I don't get elected with some author, a sleazebag, by the way. And I've been totally exonerated. No, they're getting pulled in, and that's their problem. I don't know. They're going to have to see what happens. But I watched her in Munich, and she seriously has Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, she seriously has Trump derangement syndrome. That's what they all have. That's what they all. Why wouldn't they? Donald Trump is flourishing while the Democrats are floundering. Donald Trump is flying around the world, and he's respected, and people bow down to him. And think about this. Gavin Newsom is selling knee pads. Why? Because he says everybody else is bowing down to Donald Trump. Gavin Newsom wants to be the guy that people bow down to. He's jealous of President Donald Trump. He wants that position. He wants to be president. He wants to have world leaders bow down to him. Here's the problem, though. Just being president doesn't get you the respect of world leaders. You have to be a respected president. You have to be an effective president. You have to be a strong president. Gavin Newsom would be none of those. Gavin Newsom is one of the weakest individuals who ever lived. And the way he's handling California, what he's doing to the people in California, just proves it. Even if Gavin Newsom became president, he would be the one bowing down to the others. And we know that because we've seen how the Democrats react around world leaders. They bow, they genuflect, they kowtow, they give in, they beg, they plead. That's how Democrat presidents act around world leaders. Donald Trump says, no, I'm not doing any of that. Iran, forget about it. Iran's going to deal with us, or Iran's going to suffer the consequences. That's what that was here. I have it right here.
What are you expecting from these Iran talks in Geneva tomorrow?
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. It's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
Have you been told that a deal is next to impossible?
No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. Donald Trump, here's what he says. He says, look, we could make a deal. We could work on a deal, or we could not have a deal. And then you would have to, deal with the consequences of not having that deal. And dealing with the consequences of not having a deal is not something Donald Trump thinks that they want to deal with. And after what happened, here's the thing. Donald Trump said, you got to get rid of your nuclear enrichment. And they said no. So Donald Trump went in the middle of the night and destroyed 3 different sites where they were enriching uranium. 3 different, just obliterated them. Multiple bunker buster bombs. No one knew what was coming. No one knew what happened. 20 minutes in and out. No American casualties, no loss of equipment. Beautifully orchestrated, planned out, and executed. And Iran is now, they bombed them back to the Stone Age. There's no nuclear capability in Iran, nor will there be for decades, thanks to President Donald Trump. And so Iran's making demands now. Okay, good luck. Donald Trump's going to make you an offer. You do this or this is going to happen. And Iran's probably now still, they know that Donald Trump means business, and they know that he can effectively orchestrate and execute whatever kind of consequence he offers to Iran. Gavin Newsom could never do that. Gavin Newsom would need knee pads because he'd be bending down to the Shah and the Ayatollah and all these other people all around the world, and they would just trample all over him. Donald Trump also doesn't let the fake news get to him either. Look at that. There's 2 big news stories out of CBS. CBS went from being one of the worst, most woke, most liberal news organizations to really, ever since they installed Barry Weiss as news director, it's really kind of been this self-cleaning mechanism. It's kind of like the self-deportations. Remember when Donald Trump gave illegal aliens they get the ability to self-deport? He said, look, here's the deal. You guys can leave. We'll give you $1,000 to leave right now. Take $1,000, go back home, self-deport. It'll be a lot easier for you. When you get home, you can always apply for, actual citizenship the legal way. And a lot of people, millions of illegal aliens did. They said, all right, we'll go home. We'll take the $1,000 and then we'll apply and maybe we'll come back one day. I wouldn't hold my breath, but maybe we'll come back one day. There were others that said, no, we're going to stay here. No, we live here now. We're going to be right here. We're not going anywhere. This is our home. And to those people, Donald Trump said, all right, well, we're going to come get you. And when we deport you, you're not going to be able to come back legally. And this whole thing going on at CBS kind of reminds me of that. Anderson Cooper decided he's not renewing his contract with CBS. Anderson Cooper is leaving 60 Minutes after 2 decades. I had no idea that Anderson Cooper had been on 60 Minutes for 2 decades, but apparently he had. Anderson Cooper is leaving 60 Minutes after 2 decades. This is after upheaval at the news network created by the hiring of Barry Weiss. Anderson Cooper, one of the most recognizable figures in television, is leaving 60 Minutes after 2 decades as a correspondent at CBS News' weekly documentary program. Cooper, 58, joined the program in 2006 through an agreement with CNN, where he's worked since 2001 and hosted the eponymous Anderson Cooper 360 since 2003. Through a CNN spokesperson, Cooper said he decided not to renew his CBS contract and that he planned to spend more time with his young children. All right, fine. You want to spend more time with your young kids? I get that. But let's not pretend that leaving 60 Minutes and the lucrative contract that you had there has 100% to do with your kids. Being a correspondent at 60 Minutes has been one of the greatest honors of my career, Cooper wrote in a statement. I got to tell amazing stories and work with some of the best producers, editors, and camera crews in the business. For nearly 20 years, I've been able to balance my jobs at CNN and CBS, but I have little kids now, and I want to spend as much time with them as possible, while they still want to spend time with me. Now, this is, of course, an interesting time for his exit because of what they call the evolution at CBS News. Barry Weiss, the founder of the Free Press and independent opinion site, has positioned as anti-woke. CBS has now undergone layoffs. Our strategy until now has been clinging to the audience that remains on broadcast television, and I'm here to tell you that if we stick to that strategy, we are toast, she told the news staff. In December, Weiss made a controversial decision to postpone a 60-minute segment about the Trump administration deporting Venezuelan migrants to the CICOT prison in El Salvador. Although she said she wanted an on-air interview with an administration official, the piece eventually ran without one. Weiss took control of the network after David Ellison's media company bought the Free Press for $150 million in October. Now, this, of course, is also after President Donald Trump successfully sued CBS, you may remember, for deceptively editing that Kamala Harris interview. They asked her a question. She gave a stupid answer. They said, we can't air that. She'll lose for sure. So they found a less stupid answer and they spliced it all together. But then the idiots at CBS just aired the original one in a promo and everybody caught on and said, wait a minute, that's not what she said. She sounded, that's stupid, but she sounded way stupider than that. And that led Donald Trump to win a settlement of, what was it, $16 million toward his library, which is going to be the most amazing library ever now that he's getting all of this fake news media money. So Anderson Cooper's done. He's out. He's walking away. He says he wants to spend more time with his kids. That's not true. He doesn't like that CBS is no longer pushing fake news the way he's been able to do it. He doesn't like that his stories are now going to be edited for content and truth. He doesn't like that he's going to have to live up to journalistic standards like everybody else. And he doesn't like that he finally has somebody in charge at CBS and at 60 Minutes who's going to make sure that they are not just a mouthpiece for the Democrat Party, but that they actually report unbiased news. Something that Anderson Cooper is, I don't know, it's something that Anderson Cooper is maybe incapable of or just unwilling to do. It's wild. That's not the only news coming out of CBS. Stephen Colbert is furious with the network. Now, Stephen Colbert, you may remember, has already been bleeding CBS dry. Stephen Colbert has been destroying CBS's bottom line for years. He's been producing a massively large show with a huge budget and a huge support staff. And he, of course, has a bloated salary and there's no ratings to back it all up. So CBS pulled the plug. And I think we're coming up here, right? Isn't it like another month? We only have one more month of Stephen Colbert and then he's done for good. Well, he wanted to get political, much like The View wanted to get political, and he brought on James Tallarico, who's running for Senate in Texas. And James Tallarico has been making the rounds. You may remember he was on The View, and we talked about this earlier. The View is now under investigation from the FCC because James Tallarico is running for office, and there's something called the Equal Rights Clause in the FCC bylaws that says if you're a news program, then you have to offer equal time to candidates. You have to offer equal time to candidates. So if you have James Tallarico on from the Democrat Party, you have to have the Republican on for an equal amount of time. And you have to have all of the other Democrats who are running against him on for an equal amount of time. But The View, ABC, didn't do that. And so when CBS found out that Stephen Colbert was having James Tallarico on, they realized that this could be a violation of the FCC's equal time clause. And so they pulled the interview. Here's a clip.
James Tallarico.
I don't know why all these people are cheering. I guarantee nobody in the audience knows who this guy is. They're just cheering because, this is not even a famous, James Tallarico is not even a famous politician. He's no AOC. He's no Jasmine Crockett, all of whom have sat in that very same chair. He's no Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg. I guess they're trying to make him out to be the next big thing in the Democrat Party.
Now, here's the thing. I don't usually say this to a guest, but if people are watching this right now, it's because they found us online on YouTube. I did an act of the show that's on tonight explaining why. It's not the first time you've caused some drama. FCC opening probe into The View after appearance by Tallarico. Do you mean to cause trouble?
I think that Donald Trump is worried that we're about to flip Texas.
I don't think that's a problem. But the fact of the matter is, James Tallarico is a candidate for Texas, for the Senate. And so James Tallarico has to abide by the FCC's, CBS has to abide by the FCC's equal time laws. And if they don't want to do it, that's fine. They don't want to do it. But Stephen Colbert is furious about it. Stephen Colbert, actually, he was told, this is the interesting thing. Stephen Colbert was told by CBS, you can't have James Tallarico on, and you can't tell anybody we told you not to have James Tallarico on. So what did Stephen Colbert do? He went on and told everybody, I'm not supposed to have James Tallarico on. At the top of his monologue tonight, Stephen Colbert introduced the Late Show Band, announced guest Jennifer Garner, and then asked the audience, you know who's not one of my guests tonight? James Tallarico, Texas State Representative. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers who called us directly that we could not have him on the broadcast. Then I was told in some uncertain terms that not only could I not have him on, I could not mention me not having him on. And because my network clearly does not want us to talk about this, let's talk about this. The late night host went on to explain FCC Chair Brendan Carr's new guidance on the equal time rule, which requires broadcasters to feature qualified political candidates on their airwaves, provide time to rivals if requested. Deadline has reached out to CBS for comment, yada, 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 yada. So Stephen Colbert throwing a hissy fit because not only did he not get to interview James Tallarico, but then he was told not to mention that we pulled the plug on the James Tallarico interview, and he did that anyway. Of course, he doesn't care because he's only got like 1 month left on his contract. His show's done in a month anyway. It's a free-for-all for him. I guarantee there'll be a lot of stuff that Stephen Colbert is going to be doing that his network doesn't approve of. And I imagine that that's going to be, it's probably going to be the most entertaining month of Stephen Colbert's entire career. Speaking of the government doing their job, which is really, look, it is what it is. I mean, you can think about the fair use clause. You can think about it as you will. And it was designed basically to keep media outlets from becoming mouthpieces for different parties, the Democrat Party or the Republican Party or whatever. It was designed to keep Democrats and Republicans from being locked out of one particular news broadcast or another. For example, if I worked for a news station, radio, TV, whatever, and I had a candidate on, I would have to offer, again, you don't actually have to do it, but you have to offer equal time to that candidate. And they can say, no, thank you, or they can say, all right, whatever. And then you have to bring them back on. So that's why a lot of times people don't do it. That's why a lot of times you don't see, or you would see, unless it's a debate scenario, you won't see a lot of these kinds of interviews from all of the candidates, especially not early in the game, especially during, like, say, a primary where there might be 14 candidates. Because if there's 14 candidates in a primary and you have one on, you've got to offer equal time to all of the other candidates in that primary. And that's where it gets pretty sticky. That's where it gets pretty sticky for a lot of these news organizations. But they're not, look, it's not just the FCC. The DOJ is looking into an incident. I don't know if you saw this or not. This was a clip from, where was this? In Maryland. Maryland is just the craziest state, isn't it? This is from Maryland. This woman in Maryland who sits on the school board, I think, she said that she reported a Turning Point USA chapter to Child Protective Services in Maryland. Listen to this.
Good evening. I'm going to go off script here and say congratulations, Dr. Newsom. And in the announcement of your position, it was said, we hope you will be more inclusive. I agree. I would like the anti-racism statement returned. In December of 2025, Turning Point USA hosted an event marketed to high school students with food and beverages advertised as an incentive for attendance. While community building opportunities for students are important, this event raises serious concerns related to student safety, parental rights, and governance oversight. Event materials indicated that adults, including parents and legal guardians, were not permitted to attend and that supervision would be provided by unnamed volunteers. Excluding parents and guardians from a student-focused event creates a lack of transparency and undermines established best practices for youth safety. School-affiliated or school-adjacent activities should adhere to clear supervision standards, background check requirements, and defined accountability structures. I am also concerned about a potential conflict of interest involving Board of Education members serving as guest speakers at this event. Board members are entrusted with fiduciary and ethical responsibilities, and participation in events targeting students, particularly when parental access is restricted, warrants careful review to ensure compliance with district policies, ethics guidelines, and public trust obligations. Students are widely recognized as vulnerable population. They are in critical developmental stages and especially susceptible to influence. For this reason, safeguarding measures, parental involvement, and transparency are essential. All Board of Education members in this room are mandated reporters under state law, as I am. Based on the circumstances surrounding this event, a report was made to Child Protective Services. All of this was provided along with.
Thank you for your comments.
Now I want you to understand what happened. There was a Turning Point USA event, and children, I guess students were invited to this Turning Point USA event. It's a students only event. They're not saying parents and guardians are blocked out. They're saying it's students only, right? Because that's what TPUSA, they want to have these student only events so that the students can speak freely. There were members of the Board of Education there speaking, so they were totally unsupervised. And this woman, this liberal left-wing Karen, she's so upset by it that she reported the event to Child Protective Services. Think about this. Think about the lunacy that you have to really, that has to be ingrained in your mind. Child Protective Services, TPUSA, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization. Charlie Kirk, who doesn't swear or didn't swear before he was killed. Charlie Kirk, who didn't work on the Sabbath, locked his phone in a drawer. Charlie Kirk, who knew the Bible inside and out. Charlie Kirk, who loved God and Jesus. Charlie Kirk, whose whole, his whole reason for living was to promote the family and family values. And he wanted to save America by saving the Christian idea of family. A strong husband, a strong father figure, a strong mother with maternal instincts, a family unit that knew their role in building up the next generation, making sure that they were provided for, making sure that they were mentally secure, that they were educated, that they were strong enough and healthy enough to continue the legacy of the United States of America. That was the event. And this woman was so shocked by it. She was so upset that Turning Point USA would be doing an event that her students were invited to, that board members were speaking at, anything to do with Charlie Kirk. She was so upset. She said, I reported it to Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services, that's where you report people, who beat their kids or abandon their kids. Or if the kid comes to your door crying, saying, I don't have any food and I don't know where my parents are, and they're 8 years old, you call Child Protective Services. You don't call Child Protective Services because TPUSA is holding an event with board members there. You do, of course, if you're a left-wing Karen. Well, Harmeet Dillon, the Deputy Attorney General in charge of civil rights, wrote, she reposted this and simply wrote, I'm looking into this. I'm looking into this. Because we have an administration that looks into things. We have an administration that knows what the rules are and abides with them and goes out and says, look, if you're abusing the system, if you're doing something wrong, we will look into it. If you are having candidates on your airwaves but not offering equal time to the people running against them, then that is against the law and we will look into it. This is what the Department of Justice was for. This is what the FCC was for. Not what Joe Biden and the Democrats were doing, which was weaponizing the departments against Americans. You don't send the FBI to a PTA meeting because parents don't want their kids wearing masks or they don't like the curriculum. You don't send the FBI to intimidate Catholics practicing the Latin Mass. You don't send the FBI to arrest people who are sitting on the beach praying because you won't let them go into church during COVID. These are all things that the Democrats did when they were in power. That's not something that Republicans do or will stand for. It's really kind of wild. Now there's some more information. There's some more information coming out also about this shooter. Oh, I should point out, by the way, that it was, this is something I wanted to point out earlier, but like I said, there's a lot going on today. It was 5 years ago today that we learned of the passing of Rush Limbaugh. And that is always, of course, to me especially, that's always, of course, just a crazy day. And the memory that comes back of that day. Rush Limbaugh, as meant for many people, not just me, but for many people, Rush Limbaugh was the voice that inspired them to become common sense conservatives. Not just conservatives, but commons, not just Republicans, but conservatives. And that was the big difference between Rush Limbaugh and, say, any one of these other people who are on the air today. There are people on the air today who are Republicans, or there are people who have podcasts and radio shows and TV shows who are Republicans and who claim to be MAGA and all these things. But conservatism, real conservatism, was what was at the root of Rush Limbaugh's heart and soul and program. And what Rush Limbaugh did was he brought conservatism to the mainstream, and he made people realize that conservative and Republican were not interchangeable terms, and that conservatism was the ideal that this country was founded on. Conservatism was the outline that was used. It was the foundation, that the bedrock that was used to write the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It was the Christian moral principle. I mean, conservatism takes its root in the Bible, and it is the only formula for longstanding success in a free society. Communism doesn't work. Liberalism clearly doesn't work. Socialism is abhorrent. There's nothing else in the world like conservatism that will help promote this kind of ideal of greatness and a capitalist society that encourages competition, which of course then creates thriving businesses and all kinds of technological and economic advancements. Rush Limbaugh knew that, and he spent every single day of his life trying to promote it and trying to fight for it. And then at the end, he was spending every day of his life fighting for his life. And what Rush Limbaugh did was, I mean, it was truly incredible. This is a guy who before podcasts, before Joe Rogan, I remember this, Donald Trump was running for office, and Rush Limbaugh had Donald Trump turned his whole show over to him. He had his whole show turned over to Donald Trump, and it was like 3 hours. He gave the entire thing to President Donald Trump. He interviewed President Donald Trump the entire time. Nobody else did that. Nowadays, it's commonplace. You had Joe Rogan interview Donald Trump for 3 hours. I think it was a little longer. Next week, he had JD Vance on for 3 hours. After that, he had Kamala Harris. Kidding. She didn't want to talk to him for an hour. She didn't want to talk to him for an hour, let alone for 3. But this was Rush Limbaugh paving the way. Before there were podcasts, there was Rush Limbaugh, and everything he did was unconventional, and it now is commonplace. And he was prophetic, man. The things he used to say about the Democrats, the things he would say about conservatism, the things he would say about rhinos. He saw Donald Trump coming. He saw the attack on Donald Trump coming. He saw what the Democrats were going to try to do to Donald Trump coming. And he also saw Donald Trump returning to power if Americans did what they did. He was on the Trump train long before anyone else. And the best thing about Rush Limbaugh is he used the First Amendment rights, his freedom of speech, his freedom of the press. He used those rights better than anyone. And he used them to protect the country that guaranteed those rights to him. And he used it as a shield to protect the United States of America. And he also used those same rights as a sword to smite down and to strike down anybody who dared attack her. And it was really amazing the way he did it. But the best thing, really, my favorite thing about Rush Limbaugh was that he was one of the first to take political information and popular entertainment and mix them together. He was an entertainment first performer, which is important. And that is why he was so successful. That is why he was so popular. You have to entertain people to keep their attention, to get their attention. If you can get somebody's attention by being entertaining, if you can keep their attention by being entertaining, then you can teach them whatever you want. And the reason that we have so many conservatives, the reason that America is in this great place, the reason that President Donald Trump is president right now is because Rush Limbaugh was one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. And after he entertained you, it was the old bait and switch. He got you loving his show so much that you wouldn't miss an episode, and then he taught you all about conservatism and how liberalism was a mental disorder, and that he needed you to understand the difference between the two. Really, I can't believe it's been 5 years. I mean, I really can't. I remember that. I mean, we were in the studio. Me and this guy that used to produce my show were in the studio, and we knew that Rush Limbaugh had been ill. We knew he was suffering. We knew that the traditional medicines and the traditional procedures weren't working. We knew that Rush Limbaugh was trying experimental procedures and that they weren't really doing the trick either. And we knew that it didn't seem like it would be long before Rush Limbaugh was gone. We just didn't know when. And there were internal conversations and there were people talking about it. But at the end of the day, it was February 17th and it was a surprise to everybody. And our show ended at noon and we heard some rumblings that there was a special announcement and we waited. And that's when that's when Catherine came on and she made the announcement that Rush was gone. And it was solemn and it was solitary and it was sad. And we didn't know what was going to happen to talk radio. We didn't know what was going to happen to Rush's show. We didn't know what was going to happen to us. And I remember, I always say this, I turned to the guy I worked with. I said, I feel bad for the poor fool who has to take his spot. And then a few weeks later, I found out that I was that poor fool, at least on 6 stations nationwide, at least until they silenced me for being too gosh darn entertaining and too gosh darn conservative. 2 things that I learned from the late, great Rush Limbaugh. 5 years ago today. It seems like just yesterday. I remember it like it was yesterday. Really, really crazy. Really wild. Anyway, speaking of liberalism and it being a mental disorder, there was a horrific shooting in Rhode Island yesterday. It was at a hockey game. It was at a hockey game in Rhode Island, and I read the details, and it's pretty devastating. It was a transgender male. Or I guess, is it a transgender male or female? It's a man who wanted to be a woman. And I guess, pretended to be a woman. And this transgender shooter went to the hockey game where they shot he shot his wife. And I want to say 3 of his own children. And then shot himself. This is video, it looks like, of one of the daughters.
My family. And he's dead now.
She described that shooting suspect as her father. She came out of the police department behind me here in tears after presumably being interviewed by police.
My father was a shooter.
What happened?
Shot my family. He's dead now.
What was the reasoning? Was there a family argument?
He has mental health issues.
So yes, she goes on to describe those mental health issues a little bit more. She says that he had been struggling with mental health for quite some time. She said, quote, he was very sick.
Yeah, well, clearly, I mean, here's another photo of the guy. He's people have been comparing him to Sammy Hagar. He has the Sammy Hagar hair, but he's clearly a male biologically. He has, I guess, enhanced breasts, or maybe he was taking some kind of therapeutics or hormones, whatever. Lots of tattoos, but it's really just another tragic case of a guy.
No.
As for the suspect.
Oh, here's an update from the Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I guess.
Confirm whether the suspect's a male, female. We've heard that it's a transgender person. Is that something that you have in terms of information?
So what I can say right now that we have identified the person, the suspect, by the birth name. The birth name was Robert Dorgan. We have also learned that the person does go by the name of Roberta. Also uses the last name of Esposito. But again, that will be all confirmed throughout the course of the investigation as to their status. That really doesn't have anything to do with the investigation.
All right, so it should. Robert is now Roberta Esposito, and Robert is the shooter who was identified, who walked into the ice skating rink and shot his wife and family. There was an update about the actual victims and who survived and who didn't. I want to say it was not just the mom who died, but I want to say there was another 2 victims, suspect dead, 3 others injured. No, maybe it was just the wife. Here, let's get the latest here. This is here we go. 2 victims, suspect dead. Okay, so 2 victims, 3 others injured in mass shooting. It looks like my heart is with the Pawtucket and the children and families impacted by today's tragic shooting in Rhode Island. Okay. It looks like, yeah. So it's the dead, including the suspect in shooting. Here we go. Oh, I don't want the Boston Globe for 6 months. Anyway, that's basically the latest. The headline on this story, though, however, is that we have now, for the second time in as many weeks, it appears a transgender shooter. And when you have this is the second time in 2 weeks. However, we've had a spate recently of transgender shooters across the country. We've seen it happen in Minneapolis. We've seen it happen in Tennessee. We've seen it happen in now Rhode Island. We've seen it happen all over. I mean, and there is now, first time or 2 times is a coincidence. Third time is a pattern. Well, we're on time 6 or 7. And there's now, of course, call on the right and the call from the commonsensical people to say there's going to be another one. The mental illness, the mental health that is a problem in this country that the left has encouraged and continues to encourage is creating these kinds of dangerous situations. When you have a man who pretends to be a woman, who then gets called out for being a man and shoots his own family, that's a problem. That's an issue. When you have people who everyone says are typical, they seemed fine until they weren't. They seemed fine until they started taking these drugs to change their gender ideology, before they started taking these drugs, before they started calling themselves Roberta instead of Robert. They met these people. They started going around with a different community. Their teachers were influencing them to use different pronouns. Their educators were saying, it's okay to be gay. We won't tell your parents. In some states, you could even have, gender transfer surgery in the military. The military would have paid for it. Gender reassignment surgery in some cases. All of those terrible, horrible things that we now know have dramatic psychological effects, and dramatic psychological effects lead sometimes to heinous crimes, like we saw here once again. If you haven't already, I would imagine that. Or if they haven't already, I would imagine that RFK Jr. and President Donald Trump are going to be probably looking into this. I would imagine that there's going to be some kind of Health and Human Services investigation into these hormone blockers, into these pills, into these surgeries, into these treatments, into these psychological blah, 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 blah. I imagine there's going to be investigations into all of this stuff to find out what's really causing all of the anger and the anxiousness and the anxiety and the violence that's coming from what is a growing number now, of transgender shooters. I was just looking. I want to play this clip for you. This was posted by Laura and Eve. This is Rush Limbaugh. This is a very famous clip.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
That was one of the that's one of his more famous final clips there, and you can tell even it reminded me a lot of what happened recently with Scott Adams, the deterioration, the swallowing, and that kind of thing. But he was just like Scott Adams. He was there till the very last day. Just like Scott Adams, he was on till the end. He was broadcasting till the end. And that is something that, that is just crazy. I'm just rolling through here to see what I've, there's a lot going on, that I've missed, not that I missed, but during the show, there's always people that start, people that start posting comments and posting updates. And I know that there's Senate's out of session, but there's always, there's Gavin and Mrs. Newsom, wishing Asian Americans in California a happy Lunar New Year, which is always exciting.
Now, happy Lunar New Year, California.
Yeah.
California would not be California without our great Asian American community.
Happy Lunar New Year. Happy Lunar New Year, California. That's what the Newsoms are doing. That's what they're doing today. So look, this all continues, and this is going to continue. We're going to continue to see President Donald Trump working diligently to reopen the government. We're going to see President Donald Trump working diligently to redo the media landscape. And we're going to see the Democrats trying to push back in every way, shape, or form that they can. We're going to see AOC and Gavin Newsom and Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg flying around the country and the world doing and saying ridiculous things. We're going to see all of that because they're out of control. And when I say they're out of control, I mean they're not in control of the government, and they're not in control of their minds. Remember, the Democrats, their back is still to the wall. Their backs they have nothing to lose in the Congress. They have nothing to lose in the Senate. They have nothing to lose in the White House because they have nothing in any of those places. And so now what they're doing is they're doing everything they possibly can. They're doing every kind of last ditch effort you can think of. That's what the Democrats are doing. They're doing it because they know that they have nothing to lose. And people with nothing to lose, they're dangerous. We know that they're dangerous. They're almost as dangerous as people with everything to lose. And we saw how dangerous it was when they had everything to lose when President Donald Trump was mounting his comeback. We saw what happened when Joe Biden took the FBI down to Mar-a-Lago at the order of Merrick Garland and burst into Donald Trump's private home looking for documents that they knew that were there and had also been declassified by the president. We saw how dangerous they were when they tried to indict Donald Trump on multiple different bogus charges. We saw how dangerous they are when twice they tried to assassinate Donald Trump, that we know of, probably more times. All of that continues. We saw how dangerous they were when they tried to shut down the entire world, force you to get the vaccine, when they tried to indoctrinate your children and the military, when they opened up the border and they allowed 25 million illegal immigrants to pour into this country, even helping them and inspiring them to do so, stepping aside, turning away, giving them airplane tickets and bus tickets and flying them wherever they wanted to go in the country. They brought these people in here because they knew that if they didn't, they would lose. And they had everything to lose. They didn't want President Donald Trump coming back. They didn't want you coming back. They didn't want MAGA coming back, just like Rush Limbaugh said on his broadcast. They couldn't separate you from the idea of Donald Trump, so they tried to game the system. They tried to flood the network. They wanted 25 million illegal aliens in the country and no way for them to prove that they shouldn't be able to vote. That's why now the two biggest problems the Democrats have, the two biggest anxiety points that the Democrats are pointing to are ICE deportations and voter ID. They don't want Tom Homan removing illegal aliens from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Why? Minnesota's a purple state. It's blue, but it's also red. And if there's a certain number of voters that either don't vote or change their vote or are deported from the country because they weren't supposed to vote anyway, you could see a real shift in the political landscape in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Illinois, not so much. California, probably not. New York, that's solidly blue. But Minneapolis or Minnesota is one of those states that could go either way. And even the slightest amount of votes, one way or the other, could have a dramatic change. That's why they don't want voter ID laws, and that's why they don't want the illegals gone. They have nothing to lose, which makes them almost as dangerous as when they had everything to lose. And speaking of everything to lose, if you have your entire life savings tied up in a traditional IRA, you could have everything to lose. We saw it before when the bubble burst and entire 401ks were wiped out. We saw it before when the bubble burst and people lost their life savings. They had no money. They had nothing to show for it. They had no retirement. People were panicking. They had to go back to work. The stock market dropped. The 401ks dried up. And that's when people started. That's one of the times they started investing in gold. Gold, precious metals, investments that last a long time, not cryptocurrency. That's almost as volatile as the stock market, but gold IRAs from a place like Augusta Precious Metals. If you go to markswealthstrategy.com right now, if you go to markswealthstrategy.com right this second, you can get your free gold guide. Yesterday, we had somebody go get their free gold guide, and they were on the phone with Augusta Precious Metals yesterday afternoon. If you have $50,000 in a traditional IRA, investigate moving it into a gold IRA, because gold has doubled in value in 1 year. Imagine if your $50,000 traditional IRA doubled in value in 1 year. Spoiler alert, that would be $100,000. And gold continues to rise. And Augusta Precious Metals is Better Business Bureau rated #1, 5 stars, tons of amazing reviews. And all you have to do is go to markswealthstrategy.com, or if you prefer, you can go to your phone and you can just text the word wealth to 35052. Text the word wealth to 35052, or click on the link in the show notes for markswealthstrategy.com. and investigate how you could save and protect your financial future with Augusta Precious Metals. Listen, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for subscribing to this show. If you haven't yet subscribed, now's the best time to do it. Hit the subscribe button, hit the ding-a-ling. Make sure you get notified, because we're going to keep doing what we were taught to do by Rush Limbaugh himself. We're going to keep entertaining you. We're going to keep informing you. We're going to do everything we can to get your attention, hold your attention, and use that attention to teach you why you need to be diligent. You need to protect yourself. We're gonna keep it letting you know how the other side is coming at you, how they're trying to attack you, take away your freedoms, destroy your future. And together, how we can all protect not just ourselves, but each other and this amazing country. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us every single day, learning together and working together and staying together. And fighting together so we can save